A car speeds through an empty street, after which we see a man named Minze nervously driving the vehicle as he hopes that this is his last job before he is finally free from his gang. Minze taunts himself by saying he didn't need to get into such a dangerous job just to pay off a silly student loan. He considers all his other alternative career options and curses himself for not being vigilant right when he started going to college. Suddenly, Minze gets interrupted by his boss, an angry woman with purple hair. She tells Minze not to sulk and hurry up with his driving before they are caught on the job. That's when they get spotted by a distant hero who gets ready to teach them a lesson. The hero is about to introduce himself as a boy named Mickey Diamond, but he refrains from doing so at the very last moment after he receives an alert stating that people are looking for him. Mickey decides to set himself into action and jumps off a building, hoping to make a heroic entrance. However, he slips and falls off the ledge, leading to a rather embarrassing situation. Luckily, he manages to turn it around and grabs a bar for support before he crash lands. Unfortunately for him, even this turns out to be a fail as he slips off the bar and crashes on top of a car, where a son is annoying his mom with his silly tantrums. Mickey makes an awkward introduction in his hero mask and even has the nerve to ask the mom to follow Minze and his boss because he needs to catch up to them. As expected, the mom loses her cool, and she puts her foot on the accelerator to give Mickey a rather bumpy ride. Our hero makes an immediate request to the mom, asking her to calm down, but this is of no use. So Mickey lifts up a traffic pole and smashes it down on the road, thus stopping the car before it can bother him anymore. Unfortunately, it also leads to a horrible accident, and the gas leaks, and the car explodes right in front of our eyes. The boss lady takes a look at the scene and can't believe her eyes, but she doesn't realize that she's exposing her bottom to Minze, who tries his best to keep his cool. Minze asks his boss to please sit down, but she simply calls him a killjoy, even though she realizes that he was peeping at her bottom. Minze doesn't have time to deal with her tantrums, so he ignores her and asks what he should do next. He reasons that if he continues to talk to her, then their chances of crashing are only going to increase. Regardless, the boss scolds Minze and peeps out of the car window again to see what's going on with Mickey. She claims that the hero is acting more like a criminal than either her or Minze, and she seems right too, as we see Mickey recovering from the explosion with the car still on top of him. He doesn't seem to realize what's just happened, and then he rushes to save the mom and her son, both of whom were also hurt by the accident. The son seems alright, but his mom is not responding to his calls, so he panics and calls the cops for help. Mickey makes a grand entrance and claims that he's here to save his dear citizens, but to his surprise, the son is actually calling him a bad man and asking the cops to come save him and his mom from Mickey. Our hero is visibly confused by this, but he doesn't have time to think because the cops have already reached the scene. Mickey tries to convince the cops that he's here only to help, but then he gets shot at and panics like a little girl. The cops call Mickey an empowered person and ask to surrender peacefully, otherwise they'll be forced to use force against him. Mickey continues to defend his honor by saying that he's a good guy for real. The cops take him seriously for a second, and then he points in an awkward direction, saying that the real bad guys are over there. Mickey uses this chance to make his escape, and the cops realize that they've been conned. They decide to search the perimeter to look for Mickey, but he's shown to be hiding not more than a few meters away from them, behind a pillar. Our hero breathes a sigh of relief, thinking that the worst is behind him now, but he bumps into a mysterious person who snaps their cuffs on his body, thus restricting his movement. Mickey doesn't understand what's going on, but then we see his opposition, who is a female cop. She comments that empowered heroes like him are always panicking for no rhyme or reason, and then she asks Mickey to reveal his identity. Our hero is smitten by her good looks and says that he can't make such a casual introduction because he needs to strike his hero pose. The cop isn't too impressed by his statement, so she forces him to tell her his name in his current condition. With no other option, Mickey introduces himself, but has his alias, Starboy. This makes the cop cringe like there's no tomorrow, and then she laments the situation she's gotten herself into. Mickey continues to flirt with the cop and asks her if they can set up a more intimate date without the cuffs on. That's when she reveals that she's not interested in him because she's gay. This comes as a giant shock to the Starboy, who can't believe his luck. He is taken into custody by his arrestor, and then he jokes that it isn't every day that a hero like himself is brought to jail. Now, Mickey breaks the fourth wall and introduces himself to us, the readers. He states that he might come across as a shady person, but he's actually the most heroic hero that anyone will ever find on the planet. He continues to tease us by saying he doesn't know if he has an origin story worth our time. Anyway, he figures to let us decide for ourselves, and then he says that his mom thought he was a miracle. He likes to believe that he was one in a million, but the more realistic story is that he was actually 1 out of 100 science experiments that were conducted by his mom. A flashback shows us Mickey's mom, Mary, as she watches one of her experiments and begins to panic over its destiny. Her boss asks her to calm down, but she's unable to do so because she's seen failure way too many times. Mary feels guilty about conducting all these experiments on these children because she holds herself accountable every time one of them dies. Mary bursts into tears, but her boss reassures her that everything will be alright and they'll simply move on to another specimen if the current one doesn't go as planned. Mary eventually gets up, and then her boss decides it's time to look at specimen M66. After some technical procedures, the boss releases M66 from his artificial umbilical cord, and then the baby is dropped into a pillow. The boss is a bit confused, because he doesn't know if this was a success or a failure. Luckily, the system detects a healthy heart rate, and Mary is overjoyed to see the live baby in front of her. The baby begins to move around and lets out a cry, thus proving that he is a healthy child. The boss and Mary gorge upon their success story, and then Mickey's narration reveals to us that this baby is indeed Mickey. It turns out that he was the first successful hybrid between alien and human blood. Back to the present. Mickey hears some footsteps approaching him, and as expected, it's Mary, who's here to check up on her child. Mickey is happy to see her, and expects an emotional reunion, but Mary simply checks out his face to see if he's suffered any injuries. She seems least concerned about Mickey's feelings, and asks him if any of the civilians were able to identify if he was an empowered person. Mickey reluctantly states that 2 civilians might have seen him, but goes on to add more witnesses, such as the cops who tried to arrest him earlier. Regardless, Mary is happy that not many people got to see Mickey in his true form, and states that she cannot allow him to become famous. We learn that empowered people such as Mickey aren't appreciated by the normal humans, which is why Mickey's true identity needs to be kept a secret. Mary tears his arrest papers, and then he asks her why she doesn't register him to make things easier for the both of them. However, Mary laments that the process isn't as easy as it sounds, even though she is a top scientist. Now, Mary frees Mickey from his cuffs and tells him they should go meet Matthias, who is outside waiting for them. However, she also spots the hero mask Mickey was wearing, and she rebukes him for being careless. This mask is revealed to be highly classified technology, and it simply adds on to Mickey's problems, considering he's already broken protocol. However, instead of continuing with her speech, Mary decides it'll be better if the both of them spoke in the lab. They make their way outside, but Mickey is visibly upset, so Mary tries to calm him down by saying she's only doing this to protect him. This only makes Mickey angrier, because he feels that he doesn't need to be protected, especially because he's got superpowers. Mary tries to show her care and concern for Mickey, but he argues that he should be out there in the open, saving people, instead of being locked up like a lab rat, the way he's been for the past 18 years. He admits his mistakes, but also says that he comes from good intentions and wants to experience basic things like any other hero. Mickey laments that all he has for reference are his dad's reports, but they're of no use, because he wants to be more than just a simple experiment. In the middle of his outburst, Mickey suffers from a loss of consciousness and drops to the floor in front of a panicking Mary. She quickly calls Matthias and takes Mickey away in a car, after which the Starboy wakes up feeling dazed. We can hear his parents arguing over what to do with him, so he calls out to them to let them know that he's fine. Matthias and Mary are relieved to see their son, but then Mary says that they need to go inside ASAP because Mickey's presence wasn't broadcasted. Now, the Starboy makes his way inside the head office of MADL, which is the company where his parents are working. He notices an ad for hero recruitment on the notice board, but gets interrupted by Mary, who asks him to come along with her and Matthias. Now, Mickey and his parents go to the chief officer, Caroline Smith, who doesn't look very happy with what our hero has gone out and done. She refers to Mickey as M66, as if he's a commodity, and then she calls him a discount copy of an official hero. Mary tries to get Caroline to calm down, and she defends Mickey, but she gets shut down immediately because she's of a lower position than Caroline. This back and forth continues for a while, so Mickey decides to make things interesting because he knows he's in trouble anyway. He calls Caroline by her first name, so she angrily slaps him out of contempt. This pushes Mickey over the edge, so he attacks her with his powers to show her who's boss. Caroline is visibly scared of Mickey as she isn't a physical match for him, and the Starboy knows this very well, so he taunts her for realizing the power shift in the conversation. Mary is upset to see her son like this, but Matthias keeps her calm in the middle of the chaos. Caroline calls for the guards, but they'll take time to arrive, so she brings out her overpowered spear and challenges Mickey to a fight. She seems confident at first, but Mickey simply breaks the spear with a simple smack. He attacks Caroline after that, but she dodges his moves and shocks him with her electric spear's broken half. This doesn't really hurt Mickey, but Caroline only intended to stall for time to allow the guards to arrive with stronger weapons. Mickey is electrified once again, and he falls to the floor, after which he gets apprehended by the guards. Caroline remains savage, so Mary tells her that she doesn't need to treat Mickey like an animal. Her words fall on deaf ears because Caroline simply says that empowered people like Mickey are just weapons that don't need to be humanized. She goes on to insult the Starboy even further by saying he's nothing more than a man-made and powered created by MADL, rather than the naturally occurring heroes. Caroline blames Mary for becoming too attached to Mickey because she made him with her own DNA. Then she looks at Matthias and calls him oil spill because of the way his face looks. Despite Matthias asking her to show more compassion, Caroline says that she's bringing in 2 new recruits to look over Mickey and his parents. She doesn't entertain any other questions and walks away. Matthias is visibly upset, but Mary asks him to calm down as they need to check on Mickey at the infirmary. Despite Caroline's tough appearance, she shows her true self as a panicking little girl who is truly terrified by Mickey's powers. She comments that Starboy is actually the most stable project at MADL, but is unsure if he's ready to be presented to the director. Now, she gets called into the director's room, so she nervously makes her way inside. Caroline presents her reports to the director, who asks about Mickey, also referring to him as M66. The director actually wants to see Mickey in action, despite Caroline stating that he isn't stable enough yet. The director mocks her, and then he explains that a report brought to him by a hero named Oilslick has mentioned Mickey's growing energy becoming a problem for MADL to handle. A screen pops up, and 2 heroes listed under Project PADIA, and then the director tells Caroline that Mickey is ready for this project, especially after witnessing what went down today. Caroline is surprised to hear this, but she doesn't dare to question the director's authority, so she nods in subjugation when she's told to bring the new recruits slated to work with Mickey. The director dismisses her, and then we see a mysterious purple scent coming out of an air vent. The end. Like, share, and subscribe if you want to see part 2 as well. See you soon!